Thank you so much for stopping by today. And we are going to talk about our next DIY fertilizer, which is fermented plant juice. And again, this is from the Regenerative Growers Guide to Garden Amendments, which is a really great book. We're going to be interviewing the author later this month in Bona Cresco, so that should be fun. But this book focuses on using your local materials, things from your kitchen, waste products, stuff you've got growing in your yard, even weeds, and turning them into inexpensive garden amendments. So fertilizers to nourish your plants and nourish your soil. And what we're doing today is fermented plant juice. And this is a fermented soil amendment or plant food, or you can use it to soak your seeds before you get started so that they have a good mix of nutrients already bioavailable for them. And what you want to do is to start with plant material that's harvested early in the morning. I mean, if you can get out there even before the sun comes up, so much the better. But you want it as early as possible in the morning so that it's still wet with morning dew. And this morning we gathered this bowl full of stinging nettle. And stinging nettle is really great because it's a wonderful bioaccumulator. But if you have a lot of plant material of a particular type of plant material of something you're actually growing, like if you have green peaches that have dropped from your tree, you can use that dropped fruit to make a peach tree plant food. Or if you have lettuce that's starting to get too big and start to get bitter, you can chop that up and then feed it back to your plants. So there's a lot of different ways you can use this, and we'll get into that in more detail in the membership. And I took those nettles, and you don't want to wash the plants. You just bring them in with the dew on them and then coarsely chop them up so that the juices can leak out more easily. And then to that, we're going to add some brown sugar. And I've got roughly about half a pound of chopped up plant material and half a pound of brown sugar. And then you can either toss the two of those together or alternate them in layers in your container. And I've got a 2-quart mason jar here that works well for the half-pound measures. But you can use a crock. As long as you keep the same ratio, you could scale it up or scale it down. So it's roughly equal parts plant material and sugar by weight. And for juicier things like the fruit, a little more sugar. For drier plant material, a little bit less sugar. And again, we'll get into this in more detail in the membership. And because we're working with nettles, I didn't want to mix the sugar and the nettles because they definitely still sting even after you chop them up. So Duncan is going to layer in the nettles, and then I'm going to alternate layers of the sugar as we fill the jar.
I found out while chopping that thin plastic gloves were putting.
Yeah, he tried the food service gloves, and the sting was still getting through those. So we have those around for backup, but the food service, the nettle wins over the food service gloves.
Something a little thicker.
Quite enough. All right, and so we're going to continue until it's all layered into the jar. And then I have also prepped, a little bit more in here. I've also prepped a mason jar, a small mason jar full of water, and that's going to act as our weight. And I do also have fermenting weights that fit into the top of the jar. But the mason jar full of water will just add a little bit more pressure because we want to get those juices squeezing out of the plants. And sugar is hygroscopic. So that will actually help to draw the fluids out of the plant material. And after we get this all filled up, we want to make sure we end with a layer of sugar at the top. And then we're going to get the weight on that. And you have stuff in there a little bit, babe.
Mm-hmm. I can do that.
I know you have the power. And honey, get some of this in there. It's out balance. I'm gonna put this to ferment for a week. And so we're gonna get the weight on, and during that first day, you'll start to see the liquid start pressing out of the bottom, so it'll start pooling. And then as time goes on, that weight will sink down. And eventually your plant material should be submerged below the liquid. And that helps to keep all the plant material from spoiling. So that's really important. And then if you want, you can take out your weight at that point. But you always want to try to keep that plant material submerged. And the different ways that you can use this is going to be a really concentrated mineral extract from the stinging nettle or whatever plant you're using. Comfrey is another really good one. Dandelions, with their nice deep roots, they pull up a lot from the subsoil. Or as I said, any of your garden plants, you can make up the solution and then feed it back to the garden plants. And you get that in there, love?
Yep.
All right. And after your 1 week, when you have this goopy, mushy plant material, you want to get a strainer and strain out the plant chunks. And line that with cheesecloth or a flour sack towel or something like that. Or use a really fine strainer, your choice. Or if you've got like a jelly strainer, that'll work really well. And as this sits, it'll start smelling planty and fermenty, but it should not smell rotten. The sugar is going to help kick off that fermentation process and favor the bacteria that are not so stinky. And I'm going to get this weight in here, push that down, and see if I can get as much of my plant material as possible below that. And goosh, goosh, goosh. And then put this weight on top. And then grab, oh, I'm gonna grab it. Well, because my hand is very sticky from being the sugar lady. And I'm gonna set this in a corner of the kitchen, just on my counter here. And I'm gonna keep this covered with a dishcloth to keep the sunlight out, because you want your fermentation in this case just to sit not too hot, not too cold, comfortable room temperature. And then after that week has passed, as I was saying, you run it through a strainer and then date, label, always date and label, and you can put it in a closed jar. And when you're straining, you can take, say for instance, a quart mason jar and invert your strainer into the quart mason jar and set it up like that to drain. Or you just set up your strainer in over another bowl. We have a strainer measuring bowl that fits really well. And you don't want to go ahead and squeeze the plants. Don't squeeze the plant material. Just let it gravity drain, so you're not getting too much chunkage in there. Just leaving it a nice clear liquid will help keep it shelf stable. And after you're done with this, you can use the spent plant material to make the vinegar extraction that we did yesterday. So you can reuse that material to make 2 different types of fertilizers. And it will pull out different nutrients each time. The basic water fermentation extraction versus the acidity of the vinegar extraction will pull out different minerals from that plant material. So you get 2 types of fertilizer from 1 batch of plants that you start with, which is really nice. And to use this as a foliar feed, you take this extract after it's strained, and then you add 1 to 2 tablespoons of that to 4 gallons of water. Good, clear, quality water. No chlorine. No, don't be watering your plants with chlorinated water if you can possibly avoid it. Or if you have chlorinated water, run it off, let it sit for a day before you use it to water your plants, and a lot of the chlorine will evaporate. And then you can apply that as a foliar feed or as a soil drench, or you can use that same water to soak your seeds for a day before you plant them. And that'll help boost germination rates because they'll have all the nutrients they need right there in a bioavailable form. And that is it. This is fermented plant juice. And we'll be getting into lots more different ways to boost your garden productivity in the online membership, Bona Cresco. And if you have any questions about this, does anybody have any questions, honey, right now? All right. But if you have any questions, you can always email me at Lori@Common Sense Home, or you can leave a comment to at the YouTube channel once this gets uploaded. And thank you so much for tuning in. And tomorrow we'll be back with our next garden booster session. Bye.